title in his days is that you cannot expend too much energy too early, and I think that's what he's going to try to do. Going to be a little conservative in the first half of the season, be observative of what his team has, and then when the games really start to mean something, I think he will flip that switch on again and become the LeBron of old. But going back to Kyrie, no question about it, it's going to be a little bit of a shot in the arm per se to have the swag of a new shoe deal and really put on a show in one of the best venues to see a game of basketball in the world. So, but it's really been good for Kyrie to see him put that together with the defense. I really think that LeBron's lust for defense is starting to rub off on Kyrie. But LeBron, like you mentioned, still has to keep that up himself also.
Absolutely, but I was just, again, I didn't want to because I have liked the difference. Now, I was critical of how LeBron was in that first stretch there. I'm like, stop sitting there every night and talking about what everybody else can do. And he did. He took ownership, and the team has played better since then. So I'm not piling on there at all. And you talk about Kyrie, that's somebody, and I've had back and forth with a lot of listeners over him. There's a lot of guys that think he's just this overrated guy and he'll never be what people think. And I've always said, man, there's some stuff in that kid, man. I don't know if it all come together. He has to learn how to play defense. That's always been like my biggest thing over the years was the defense and the single-mindedness on the offense, because he's playing point guard different than I'm used to the point guard position being played, and he's really not a point guard. To me, he's not a true point guard. He's a scoring point guard, which when you've got a point forward like LeBron allows him to, and I think they're figuring that out now, slip into this role where he can still distribute, but the main distribution is going to go through LeBron. Kyrie is able to attack and break down. Last night, LeBron really did wax on about the evolution of Kyrie Irving's game and how he went so far as to call him the best finisher in the game and one of the best the game has ever seen. And we have seen some real English here in this season, these finishes. He really has taken his drive to the next level. I was talking about the other night against the Bucks. He stutter-stepped on his way to the hoop, and it was a playground. It was an and one mixtape move, and you just see the whole queue stand up off of it before he drives to the hole. We're really beginning to see him evolve his game here. And defensively, too, I joke that the jig is up on him because he's proven that he can play defense now, so people are going to expect it all the time. But as you said, we've really seen, and I'll give some of it to LeBron being here and rubbing off, but I think it was an adjustment period for Kyrie at first. He was the guy, and he didn't have very many expectations. He was the guy, and he could show up late for class at the same time. And now it was a lot of different adjustments to the dynamic, and we're seeing him get comfortable with it and really start to go into his own here on another level. This is the Kyrie Irving that all summer long NBA players were talking about seeing as he played with the national team. This is the Kyrie Irving that people said had been developing his game over the summer. I think we're starting to see the payoff here.
Oh, absolutely, Jerry. And I think that really it was a big beneficiary type thing for Kyrie to have played more basketball during the summer with the national thing. And a couple games ago, I think it was one of the games before the Milwaukee game, that David Blatt really praised Kyrie for having played with the national team, and that when you play that much basketball over that length of time, you're going to learn the ins and outs of the game. You're going to talk daily, one-on-one conversations with some of the best basketball players in the world, and some NBA historians and Hall of Famers as well. So this has been a huge growing period for Kyrie Irving. And you had to expect that with LeBron and Love and everybody else coming into this organization, that somebody that was already a part of the core of that team had to pick up some of that slack. I mean, they won 33 games a year ago, and you can't just really flip a switch and expect to be at a championship contender. No, Kyrie Irving knew that if there was going to be one guy who was a part of the young core of this team that was going to pick up the slack defensively, it had to be him. It was a self-inserted thing. and that essentially led to him shutting down Tony Parker, one of the most elite guards, the point guards in this league, shutting him down to 8 points, holding John Wall the other night against Washington to, I believe it was 8, somewhere less than 10 also. But now, in the last couple of games, he's played some point guards where you don't really get excited to defend them per se, but he's still maintaining that level of defense. And not only that, but he's scoring high figures in points a game, specifically last night with the 37. So hats off to Kyrie Irving, and hope it continues, because if he goes, this team will go with him and LeBron as well.
And you know what? While a lot of people are, I think, prematurely pointing to this season as a coming out party for Kyrie Irving, I'm looking at next season and saying, you don't understand. See, yeah, this is great. He's developing as he's able to star here. But this season, to me, he's going to learn what you just said, which is how to sustain that effort, both sides of the ball, for a whole season. He'll learn that he's going to have to perhaps work even more. And Fred pointed out last night, for those of you guys that were watching, the massive conditioning work that Kyrie continues to pour on last night. And I got to tell you, if you noticed in the huddle, I mean, he's barely sweating and breathing hard at points late in that game where everybody, I mean, all of the guys are soaked in sweat. I mean, you can see the work that Kyrie has put into his conditioning. But he'll learn that. To me, this season will be a learning season for him. However good it is, I expect him to be better next year, because he'll learn whatever deficiencies are lacking in his game, I think, and learn how to add to those next year. The great ones always do that. They always work on the next thing. Each year they work on something, they improve something. So I think this year he'll learn maybe what he's got to do to go even to that next level there. And you know what, again, there's a lot of work to be done with this team, a lot of growth. A couple of things, speaking of stuff that Fred pointed out last night, I want to talk about the team as a whole, getting away from Kyrie and LeBron and individuals. I saw something interesting that Fred went and looked up and talked about last night on the broadcast, and it was, as we've done this before, made comparisons to the first Miami Heat season when they put their grouping together, and this Cavaliers team here. We do it with the record. We do it with the ups and downs. Well, he found another place where they're not only very similar, but they are nearly identical, and it's bench scoring against the starters. And with the Heat, the same thing played out as is what is currently happening with this year's Cavs team. The starting unit leads the NBA in points scored. They're the most effective starting unit in the NBA, and the bench is the opposite. They are dead last in the NBA in scoring, and in LeBron's first season where he, Bosh, and Wade combined in Miami, it was the exact same split. They were number one in starter scoring and last in bench scoring, and it took a minute. As we saw, they fell short, and then they made their tweaks to that roster and got it where they needed to win the next couple of championships in a row. And that's the point that the Cavs are at now, and it's doubled, by the way, Eddie, with last night. Just when you thought maybe Mike Miller was going to start to get untracked a bit coming off of this bench, you get the double misfortune. He gets fouled on the three. They call the offensive foul on Mike Miller, and he bangs his head on the play, gets a concussion. Now he's in the concussion protocol as well. So even more depth issues coming out of last night's game. But another similarity between this team and that team that shows that this is the formula. It's gone before, and you have to figure out how to move things around to make it all come together to truly be a championship team. But it plays out very similar to that first year in Miami again.
Well, Jerry, and I think you have to kind of expect that when your starters are this high profile, when three of them at least are going to be playing a minimum of 32 minutes a night, probably more in the 35 to 37-ish minute range a night, there's just not really a whole lot of time for the bench to really get in and develop a groove, and not many opportunities for guys to score. I mean, how often have we seen the Cavs in a game this season where all three of the big three, Irving, Love, and James, are all sitting at the same time? I would not bet against that. It really hasn't happened much, if any, time this season. But one thing that I will say about this bench, it really hasn't done them many favors. They're not really maintaining that level of play. And of course, it's really difficult to maintain that level of play when you've got Joe Harris, a second-round pick out there. You've got Dion Waiters, who still may or may not be buying into the whole system here. The Cavs, even in his fourth year. They can go out and get help if they want to. If Griffin deems that a deal would be beneficial to them, he's not going to be afraid to do it at all. But Jerry, the one thing that has been on my mind for the last couple of weeks in regards to the Cavaliers bench, Mr. Dellavedova goes down with an ACL injury. He's going to miss some time. And boy, did that throw a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things out of whack, not only in the Cavs starting rotation, but in the bench as well. David Blatt was more or less forced into starting Sean Marion at the 2 guard, a position that he has not played since his early 20s, to say the least.
I know.
just because he's the most versatile defender.
Absolutely. We mentioned it, that's not what you change the role. It's not saying that he can't be effective. He's done what he can do, but the optimal role for him is where he was signed for, which was to back up LeBron, come in and be able to back up a couple of positions and defend a couple of different positions off of the bench there. I agree. That does the double whammy of changing your dynamic in your starting rotation and weakening your bench at the same time. They should have Delly back. We were talking about it. I know it's nothing set in stone, but they're looking perhaps for the end of this weekend, beginning of next week, to get him back out there full and playing, and that'll go into, as you said, starting to settle a rotation back in, hopefully. That was a guy that became he was a comfortable piece for Mike Brown last year as he was able to go out there and fill a lot of roles. He's not going to drop the buckets, but you don't need him to in this team with the way the scoring is broke down. It's a lot like Tristan Thompson. His style fits right because he does all the other things that you need guys to do. I love Delly. I've always been a supporter of him since last year, and I think that he will help settle things down a bit there for David Blatt, perhaps with his second unit.
And really, for the most part of this season, Jerry, the starting shooting guard position has been a revolving door because we've seen Delly, we've seen Dion Waiters, we've seen Marion. Maybe at some point in this season, maybe on a night or two occasional basis, we might see Mike Miller start, and then David will probably pull him about 3 or 4 minutes into the game. But, they're still looking for stability at that position, not only in the starting unit, but on the bench as well. And that might be a good reason for the Cavs to go out and pursue another 2 guard. And they also do need probably another big to play alongside Thompson when he comes off the bench. But regardless, really nobody, that's a Cleveland Cavaliers basketball aficionado saw the Delly injury as this irrelevant. I mean, it really is relevant. And the Cavs are just dying to get him back because really he's their Anderson Varejao in the front court. That's really what he does. He's a nitty-gritty defender. Yes. He packs a punch despite the fact that he's, not the biggest guy in the world, even for a guard. But once they get him back, I think you'll finally be able to see a little stability from the bench. You might see Marion score close to double figures a night off of the bench. Blatt will find a spot for him, hopefully not at the 2 guard, maybe more backup 3, maybe even backup power forward. But, I would not expect the Cavaliers bench to continue to be the worst. They'll be one of the worst, but not the worst. But it's not because they're a bad bench. It's just because the 3 guys ahead of them are just that good.
No, absolutely, and those are all great points, and that was a good analogy there. Yeah, the Anderson Varejao of the front court, that's a lot. It's those intangibles, those things that don't – now, some of them do show up on a box score, but some of them don't as well. Tonight, tell you what, going to be another challenge here. We've seen these 2 teams hook it up before, and we know what happened the last time. Raptors and the Cavs, Kyrie Irving and Kyle Lowry, both coming off of fantastic performances here in their last games. We just talked about Irving. Lowry had a career-high game the other night night. He scored 39 points against the Jazz, 13 of 22 shooting, and that's going to be interesting to see. We talked about Kyrie defensively, because here's going to be a game where you're not only going to have your hands full on one end of the ball, but clearly both ends of the ball against a guy like Kyle Lowry.